And we are live. This is Dumb the Wiser, and I'm John Paul Berg. Today we have joining us our special guest, Mr. Peyman Askari. How are you doing, sir?
I'm good. Every time you introduce me, I assume you mean like a special guest.
Special guest to the show, our returning guest. Pretty much one of the only guests that I've had.
How's it going, JP?
Good, brother. It's good to see you here from the police state of Nova Scotia, where our very movement is restricted, which is
Well,
it's surreal when you're in it, right? Like everyone in other parts of Canada is observing it, but when you're in it and the people are already kind of in that mass formation where they're either pro these restrictions or anti them vehemently too, it's very surreal.
yeah, from my perspective, it's like every man for himself. I'm looking at the Maritimes, and I'm just like, you know what? Let's contain it to those islands for now. We'll deal. Let's hope this does not make sure it doesn't get to the mainland.
Honestly, that's why I think Nova Scotia and then New Brunswick were chosen for this. And we were talking a bit beforehand. There's a lot of information relative to the government spraying glyphosate on the forests. Now, I mean, you could call it a coincidence. I'm not going to correlate, correlation doesn't equate to causation, but I mean, coincidentally, we will say, um, it totally correlated with the day that he started these unprecedented restrictions. So it's like kind of makes you wonder. I could see why a lot of conspiracy theorists are all over this. It's an interesting kind of a narrative shift.
I don't think you're wrong. It is a bit of a conspiracy, actually. They got in with this whole elbows up thing, and they whipped people up into a frenzy. And now I'm talking about the liberals over the last 10, 12 years, they've destroyed the economy. So they're using that destruction of the economy as a justification for, as you and I were talking about, exploring uranium in the same forests that they're spraying glyphosate in, and that they've, apparently, maybe by act of God or arson, they've destroyed the forest now.
Yeah, it's again, it's just too much of a coincidence for me. I have to mention it. People are so conditioned by all the hysteria surrounding it that they've literally kind of made themselves so ineffectual that they feel that they can't speak to this or question it. And I think honestly, it sounds petty, but I think most people are just that afraid of someone calling them crazy or a conspiracy theorist. That's how strong that social pressure is. A lot of people don't realize that. um, it's a major hindrance to people exploring the very real potential that our government maybe doesn't have our best interests at heart.
Yeah, you were talking about this earlier in the backstage, where in the '60s, the Americans, they believed the government killed their president, JFK. And
Mhm.
then in the '90s, if you believe that, you were a crackpot.
Well, yeah, that's what I said. I went back and I watched. We were speaking about William F. Buckley. I was watching some of his old show, Firing Line, and for those who don't know, it was the equivalent of like Bill Maher. It was a political talk show, and it was like they would have various academics of the era on. And it was on the air when the Kennedy assassination happened. And I watched some of the episodes that were aired shortly thereafter. And just the general feel when they were discussing it and the audience reaction indicated to me that like the most of the people were leaning towards clearly this was some kind of an inside job. And I mean, they were closer to all the chaos back then too. I mean, you had that famous warning from Eisenhower when he left office, who was the previous president before Kennedy, that said the biggest threat is not from abroad, it's domestic. It's these, military industrial defense contractor interests. He actually coined that term right there in that famous speech when he was leaving office. So, I mean, I think the general consensus, they didn't have as much of a control over the narrative then because like people were older, they just went through World War II. It was a different generation. They were super skeptical of everything, rightfully so. And then subsequent generations, like you said, in the 90s or especially now, it's like these are sacred cows. These narratives are like these sacred cows in Western culture, and if you're not allowed to question them, and that's where this terminology with conspiracy theorists comes from, which to be utilized as a pejorative is just fucking nuts when you realize where it came from. That term was normalized in the 60s relative to skepticism about the Kennedy assassination. And that's famous. People, everyone can vet that for themselves. So, I mean, we participate in our own subjugation. And I mean, that's the system. That's how bad I believe. And I truly do. I believe that we're being conditioned. And I think at the same time, there's like, with all the chaos geopolitically, it's really providing people with some glimpses behind the curtain to see what's potentially really going on, how these elite people kind of really are still a ruling class, and how I think most of our history was just predicated on some pretty big lies. I don't necessarily think it was we were in the free world. I think by the time the Soviet Union fell, that this globalist union with globalization was so strong that they were operating on their own behest, more dictatorially or more kind of a behind the scenes oligarchy. And I think subsequent presidents and administrations of all of the countries played along with this powerful order. And I think right now we're seeing something happen, some kind of factionalization within it.
Yeah, this sort of back and forth information war has been going on for a while. So before World War One, everybody in the U.S. they were pushing for peace, and then you had the Lusitania. World War II, they wanted to stay out of it, and then you had Pearl Harbor. I'm not saying that FDR it was an inside job or anything, but that's just the way things happen.
Lots of conspiracies that say that.
Yeah, I mean, like you had the church committees, you had the attempted Reagan assassination, and then you had, as you mentioned, the fall of the Soviet Union. So then this cabal that had been forming, they were given the world like unopposed. Mm-hmm. And then 9/11 happened, sort of the same thing. Like we tried to fight back. Even I was against 9/11 at the time. I was a left-wing psychopath because I was in university, mm-hmm. but I fought back. I'm like, this Patriot Act is horrible. And now it's almost like, I mean, by the grace of Trump, I think we're going to get out of it. But it feels like they're trying to do the same thing. Like everybody wants to go into more liberty, and they're trying to start a conflict with Russia so they can justify another war to steal more of our rights.
Yeah, and it seems abundantly clear at this point. Like you look at all of the Europeans that came over with Ursula and all the rest of them. I heard one commentator call them the Seven Dwarfs. But the way he greeted them, he just had one of his staffers, I think she was an ex-Fox News host, greet them all when they were coming out of their limousine at the White House. And then he had them all kind of waiting around, all sitting together as if he was the principal giving them a lecture. And like I say with Trump, like he's very aware of optics. He's very aware of what everyone's looking. He knows that the whole world's attention is on him and that people are going to be theorizing. So it's like he sets these things up, just like the last time Zelensky was there to visit him too. He wants the conflict. He wants to make it known. He's very aware of the optics and the prevalence of the optics in these situations. And like I say, I'm watching it and all I can keep thinking to myself is like, he wants us to know that these people don't represent their constituents. They are political constructs that represent a globalist oligarchy behind the scenes. I mean, you could tell, like, well, here's my biggest argument for this, to lend credence to this assertion. It's like, how can you logically get to the place where you think that all of our independent countries, all of our independent nations at the exact same time implement the same heinous, detrimental policies, the same weaponized mass migration with the Cloward-Piven strategy, overwhelming our economies, creating the same climate policies, trying to implement the same things? Like, there's just no way that this all is occurring organically. There's an order behind the scenes that are calling the shots. And it's, again, I know it's still in this climate, after everything we've seen, that's still a controversial statement. But as I've stated before, it's like, if you can't get to that kind of, if you can't accept that proposition, it's hard to then have a conversation, because that's just how I see it. Like, and that's what I think Trump's trying to show everyone, man. Just like I think with Pierre Poilievre, when he started pushing on the terrorists, Pierre Poilievre showed his whole hand. He was matching Carney's rhetoric verbatim. And we were already getting tired of making excuses for Pierre Poilievre in Canada with his pandering, dressing up to pander to these various communities, while we all know that like the immigration is crazy out of control.
Just on as an aside, Pierre Poilievre, like a nanosecond after winning the by-election, he came out and he tweeted about Amy Ham. This is the nurse that got hit with like a $93,000 fine for essentially saying there's two genders, or respect women's spaces. And it's like, why are you doing this now? Like, where were you the last few years? Same thing with, I don't know. I don't even think he's come out against the climate lockdowns on the maritime provinces. But it's like, when it's politically expedient for these people, they'll tell the truth. Otherwise, they'll read whatever's on the teleprompter.
Yeah, and that's just so abundantly clear now. And for people that'll make the excuse, the most common one you hear, it's like, well, you're just dumb. You don't understand politics. He has to do this. It's a very liberal electorate. It's like, no, man, a true leader can sense when things are wrong and he takes a stance. And a real leader with integrity he'll take a bold, unpopular stance because that's how we shift the Overton window. And I mean, we don't have that leader in Canada. I mean, we do, but they get no attention. I mean, lots of the smaller party leaders in Canada are saying a lot of right things, but I mean, the stranglehold, the whole system is so irredeemably compromised. Our institutions are so captured. Even the fourth estate, what's not the fourth estate, but what's supposed to be the media, which has like a very crucial, fundamental significance to informing the population. Any of our democratic style governments are going to require a non-biased, non-impartial media apparatus. That's how it works. And we haven't ever had that in my life. Like they've always been controlled by various interests. And like I say, they're just narrative pushers. They just perpetuate these narratives. So we all kind of accept it.
Yeah, it's a testament not just to how great America's Constitution is, but how the spirit of liberty it burns within every American. They have a First Amendment, the right to free speech, and they fight for that. You know, they defend that, and that's how they keep it. Here in Canada, we never had it. We don't want it. So now we have, Bill C-11, Bill C-18, Online Streaming Act, Online News Act. They want to bring the Online Harms Act. And you and I were getting suppressed while they have state-sponsored media with at least $1 billion to just one, CBC, and let's say another couple billion to the other ones. And this is why those smaller political party leaders that you were talking about, they get no exposure. So all they hear is the Pierre Poilievres and the Mark Carneys and, that hobgoblin Elizabeth May. That's what they hear.
Yeah, to top it off too, and I've referenced this before, and this is what really motivated me to want to start doing a podcast and not just posting my articles and my writings on X. It's there's a lot of people now that are finally, and it's about time, better late than never, but they're finally becoming demystified or disillusioned with what the corporate press is selling them. The state subsidized press, the state sponsored press, it's all controlled. That ecosystem is so orchestrated, it's hard for most people to fathom. But they're looking around, their neighborhoods are getting worse, their cities are getting worse. The economy is getting worse, they're getting brokered, nothing's getting better. So they're starting to finally like dip their toes in the water of social media or alternative media. And then when they get on here, the people that are being boosted on these platforms are the fucking fake ass ones. The ones that fit their dialectic, like Pierre Poilievre is real. And like people, he matters in some way. It's like, that's a performance. That whole thing is a performance. And everyone's, oh, where's your proof? It's like, dude, you don't have tangible direct evidence for this. And I make the reference to Boris Johnson in the UK. I mean, everyone now knows in retrospect that he was clearly working with this globalist order. That's just abundantly clear. But at the same time, even though it happened and we all know it, we still don't have proof of it. Tangible evidence. These people have been running things for a very long time. And I hate to use that kind of colloquial, these people are they. But again, it's a rhetorical necessity when you're discussing what's going on currently, because like everything's fake and gay. That saying is so true, man. And it's like we're all realizing it.
And we're in 2025 right now. So we are almost 10 years away from when Donald Trump first got elected. And now we see why the left, the global order, had such a temper tantrum when he won, because he's proven to the world that there is a way for ordinary people to affect change outside of the power structure, outside the oligarchy. Now, before I get flamed in the comments, I'm not saying that Donald Trump is 100% fire-breathing populist, but he's 2%, 3%, as opposed to the 0% we're used to.
He was appealing to that demographic, so that makes him, for all intents and purpose, a populist. Clearly, he's a billionaire. He's from a very privileged class. He was born into extravagant wealth. But I mean, that was who he was speaking to, and everyone's always got that common touch, and he did. He understood the moment. He was very in tune with the zeitgeist of 2016. And you look, it happened in Europe too. It's like this whole fucking facade And pardon my vulgarity, but I have to put emphasis on this whole facade that the West was, it's not only fake, it's not working anymore at this point. So I mean, and all of us are feeling it. It's the working class. If the upper class gets a cold, the working class dies of pneumonia. We feel things first. We're the canary in the coal mines, working class people, and that's where these things hit. And that's why they were so populist based, these movements, because it's the working class that is now like, wow, I got to rent a room out in my small apartment just in order to scrape by and not be, falling behind on things and going into debt. And this is with like multiple adults working in a household. Like it's pretty crazy. But I think that being like, once it got tangible for people in their day-to-day lives, they kind of had the necessity of now having to pay attention to this. And that worked to our advantage, at least. I mean, to the extent that they didn't get ahead of it and start to control it with their media and with their shill accounts on social media.
Yeah, this has been a very long time in the making, but certainly since 2008, the great financial crash, you could almost say that's when Donald Trump's campaign started. But I kind of go back to Donald Trump because in Canada, I talk to a lot of, politically, you do as well, politically active Canadians like you and I.
Mm-hmm.
And yes, there's a sense of peril and, there's a depression, disappointment, but people, they're feeling their way around a room like a blind man. They're trying to looking for the light switch. They're trying to figure out like, how do we get out of this? And everybody is looking at Donald Trump. They're like, guys, don't panic. He showed us the way. There is a way to do this outside of the establishment, and we'll find it. That's sort of the message of hope.
Yeah, I believe that too. And I honestly think now Trump gets a lot of shit now because there's a lot of things he couldn't make happen. And I think you got to, on some level, give him a bit of benefit of the doubt, considering, I mean, he's up against the power structure that has existed for a very long time, and he's trying to push against it. And it's to varying results he's having, right? It gets you. We all kind of wanted him to like just, when he became president again this time, just come up and tell everyone, like, look, guys, it's all bullshit. Like what you thought was democracy, they owned both parties in it. They're Hegelian dialectic traps. You're being heard at. You have been being heard at. You're being ideologically subverted by the media. You're being ideologically subverted by Hollywood, by all of these other aspects of it, and it happens right out of the womb. We're conditioned to accept these very fallacious framings for everything. Climate change, all kinds of things. The Rousseauian framing that like Western culture is irredeemable. And like there's a pure natural culture, like in some of the native tribes or some of the non-Western peoples were more noble, that kind of noble savage trope. That's a Rousseauian framing, but these framings are baked into our culture. And Joe Average doesn't understand the relevance of these philosophical framings and how they kind of shift your interpretive lens when you're trying to view everything, right? Atheism being one of the most prevalent to speak to, because that's like a broader framing. Like we see ourselves as machines. Like everyone right away, if they're not functioning properly, they think right away, oh, well, I got a mental illness. I have a chemical imbalance. And they go to the pharmaceutical industry people and they'll give you an SSRI kind of inducing or inhibiting drug. And they're kind of giving you a chemical lobotomy. And then you come back and your life still sucks, but like you start to, have a placebo effect and tell yourself it's better. And it's just like, we're so lost, man. Masculinity is just declining. Young people are just more hopeless and more easily swayed into these even more detrimental, even more fallacious conceptual framings, like gender being malleable. Like how lost are we when we can't even agree upon something like that? And that comes from postmodernist philosophical framings, that gender is now a social construct. It's from a school of thought called social constructivism. And it's such an odd, peculiar school of philosophical thought that it's like, why are we teaching this as truth? Like there's not only holes in it, it's predicated on fallacious nonsense. So, I mean, and that's what we're teaching our kids. And that's what there's these young pseudo-moralistic, pseudo-rebellious teenagers with blue hair. And they think that there's a heteronormative patriarchy that's holding them down. And they're feeding right into it. They don't realize that they're being weaponized against the better parts of their own society. It's kind of fucked up, man. Pardon my vulgarity again.
I was watching a meme this morning where this like middle of the road centrist guy was trying to have a discussion with this extreme left wing guy, and the left wing guy's like, DEI is great. They're giving tax incentives to the government to hire, people of minorities, people of color. And the guy's like, listen to me, government doesn't pay taxes. You can't give good. And the left wing guy would have none of it. And you hear the same thing with people with genders. They're like, absolutely, a man can have a period. He's like, no, like if you have a certain chromosome, you can't have a period. He's like, yeah, but what if you identify as this? Like, then you're a woman. You're not a man. And I guess like this is the world that the youth are kind of born into. They're confused. We're confusing them, and they have no purpose. And you mentioned atheism; they have no code, like guiding principles to follow.
Yeah, well, I mean, if you're not religious, honestly, I mean, you're in postmodernism. If you don't believe there is morality and there's a centralized logos that everything else is their gauge for, like Christians and Western cultures got this from scripture. But I mean, if you don't believe that, then you believe it's malleable and it's subjective. So then you get into the realm of where everyone has their own truth and it's moral relativism. So it's just by its very nature. If you dispense with God, you're in postmodernist type of thought. And it's very sketchy territory philosophically. Like people don't understand a lot of things, obviously. Like the epistemological concept of truth is complicated. And we can kind of conflate facts with truth. Like truth is deeper. And truth has to be gauged by something, right? There's a logos. Like it's very complicated. I won't bore our audience with that. Why don't you tell us about some of the stuff you've been working on, Peyman? I always dominate these conversations. Tell us about some of the stuff you're doing with the citizens groups and all that stuff.
So we're doing something called the People's Parliament. We've had one episode with Dr. Anna Silvestrovich. So the format of these commissions, this People's Parliament, it's a commission where you have a subject matter expert. So in this case, it's Dr. Anna Silvestrovich, who's been fighting the BC healthcare system for decades. And then we identify a single piece of legislation, like the BC Mental Health Act. We bring her on and then we almost depose her. We ask her for questions, inquisitive questions to figure out how to best explain the legislation to ordinary Canadians. And we're rolling out a second episode at the end of next week. The whole purpose is to go to Canadians and say, listen, we don't need these bureaucrats. We don't need these politicians in Ottawa. We don't need these MPs. We can sit down and we can learn these things together. And through the process of working through this, we can understand the law and we can identify where the law is broken. We don't need to wait for someone to come and get us out of this mess.
Yeah, it's a great message, man. And the underlying premise of just getting Canadians kind of engaged a little bit, because that's the disconnect. Everyone feels so demoralized right now. They feel ineffectual. Like, where do you even start? And especially if you believe, as I do, that both major parties are just, they're hopeless. Like you're just, that's distractionary. I think it's performative at this point. Furthermore, I think most of the provincial governments are entirely playing along with this whole regime. I think the lockdowns in Nova Scotia are true to that, are a testament to that. But I mean, what has to happen is some education. Like the most vehement arguments from people, it's funny. I don't know if it's some Dunning-Kruger effect in there, but like the most vehement arguments I get politically from people are from people that are just politically illiterate. They don't understand the functional premise of our political system. They don't understand a modicum regarding our legal system or our judiciary. And I'm no expert on any of this subject matter neither, but I do have a kind of a rudimentary conception, we'll say, of these processes. And I mean, that's why, and then my opinions therefore are based around that. Like the education system hasn't merely failed us, it's inundated us with fallacious bullshit. And it made us almost conditioned and more susceptible to not seeing what's truly going on. So I think us, like you having like, bringing more attention and having these kind of, events where you're analyzing the laws and you're getting people to participate in it, and then it's all streamed. I think it's an excellent idea. I wish it would get more attention. I don't think it's garnering the attention it deserves, and it just kind of bothers me. And again, I think it's a testament to the demoralization or the apathy that everyone's feeling.
Let's go back to what you said about the worst arguments you get are from people who are politically illiterate, or the worst arguments. I think they come across as stupid, but they have a core underlying belief that's different from your core underlying belief that makes them at odds with you. And what I'm talking about is who is the sovereign, what's the fundamental unit of society. So in my mind, and I'm assuming it's in your mind, even though I don't have a family, I think it's the family unit that should be making those decisions. In their mind, it's the state. And I'll give you an example. Here in Vancouver, downtown Vancouver, they passed a law that says that anybody that has a wood burning fireplace or wood burning stove has to register that stove. Put aside the fact that like nobody even has these things anymore, but it's just that they're creating the registry. Now, typically it's the family that makes that decision. Like your mom might say, listen, we're going to bed, we don't want the room to be smoky, no more fire, listen, your father's got a raise, we're going to invest in a gas stove, like that's the way the decision's made by the family. But the way that they've been taught, and this ties back to the education system failure you were talking about, is no, it's the state that should make that decision. And that the breakup of the family unit has both caused this, and it's guided this along as well.
And I think it's correlated to what we were saying about the common atheism that there is. Like, we live in a very secularized culture. So, I mean, if you're not going to do things by regard of its morality, like, hey, these are the right things to do, then you naturally think, well, we need a legislative body to ensure that these things are occurring, right? So I definitely think there's a corollary there, a very relevant one. Like, these things are so interconnected in ways we don't entirely understand. It's like a complex system, and for us to observe this complex system, it's like we're biased. Like, we have a perspective bias inbuilt by default just because we're a part of it. I got a big ass fly flying around here, man. But I definitely think that's relevant to it all, and I agree, man. And I think it's, now, you and I definitely are biased. We're more liberty minded people for sure, like liberty maximalist or more libertarian leaning in the realm of conservatism. But there's a lot of people now that are coming on the scene and gaining relevance that are not. They're very post liberal, proudly so. And it's crazy to see. You're seeing it everywhere. You're seeing all of this happening in America. You're seeing it happen in Canada as well. And it's like, I just don't really know what to make of that. There's so many things that I line up with them on, and then there's so many things I don't. I'm just going to say it, is call it out, like the Dominion Society. A lot of people tag me in their content. A lot of people are always, referencing them to me. And like, for me personally, and I've mentioned it before, in a non-adversarial way, I don't want to attack these guys. I think there should be, room for diverse opinions. But for me personally, I have fundamental disagreements with it. Like, again, being more liberty minded. It's a very post-liberal ethos, pro-monarchy, pro-Westminster parliamentary sentiment behind it. Now, I do agree entirely with some of the remigration principles of it. And it's not an anti-immigration stance. It's really not. Like, what's happened in the West has been a weaponized mass migration. So, I mean, people conflate it all with this racialist purviews and stuff. And I think it really, it cheapens the conversation, because it's not, for me, it's not necessarily about that. It's the practicality of it all. But I got to say, for me personally, as a liberty-minded individual, the post-liberal sentiment gaining prevalence within conservative circles, I don't like it. It frightens me a little bit.
So I actually support the Dominion Society, and it's pretty much for the same reasons that you said.
Mhm.
Uh, we need a movement to come out and say, listen, like, it's okay to talk about, stopping immigration. And they're talking about remigration, which is, to my understanding, is giving economic incentives to the ones that are here legally to go back, and the ones that have expired visas, obviously terminate those and, boot them out of the country. I don't agree with I'm not a monarchy guy. I'm a pro-republic guy. So
Mhm.
I don't agree with that. But the way I see it, we're in a war, and war makes strange bedfellows.
Well, it does too, and I mean, it is important right now to realize there's a million things that divide us, and very few principles that can unite us. So I think it's good to put emphasis on that. And again, I wanna reiterate, I wasn't trying to call that out, just explain my perspective with it, because so many people will. I'm not associated with it in any way, but I mean, I think people associate me with it relative to some of my speaking against the mass migration things, but again, I'm not trying to disparage anyone nor discredit anyone or cast anyone in a poor light. That's not not where I'm at. I really do. I agree with what you kind of just relayed, which is like we have to find some things in common right now. It's crucial that we remain united in some semblance.
Let me give a prediction for what's going to happen with the Dominion Society. They're going to put out some messaging that's going to come across as unsavory, like I don't want to say racist, but xenophobic maybe. And then the left is going to attack them viciously. And then the members in the right are going to say, like, guys, like, we don't need this right now. This is dividing the right. Let's get rid of the Dominion Society. So I foresee a sort of a civil war coming.
It wouldn't surprise me, and that's what I see when I look at the fragmented nature of everything right now. It's like I can't necessarily think it's. I think it's kind of being affected in some regard. I really do, and I think there's a lot of disingenuous players, be them in intelligence agents, people, but they're utilizing a lot of our natural proclivities and our political leanings to fragment us. It's like right now we're being divided based upon class. We're being divided based upon age. There's in Canada, like, and it's very similar to like what happened in Maoist China. Like it's the youth. It's these greedy boomers. They got everything. They're hoarding all the wealth. They don't want anything to change. This system is an advantage to them. And they're just, inconsiderate and they don't care about us. And it's like all of these different things. I think it's more complex than that. I think there's an oligarchy that is very much, I think it's a managed decline in Canada. I've heard a lot of people that are more like kind of economically minded refer to it. It's very similar to what happens in the corporate world. If you kind of acquire a corporation and instead of just closing it and trying to liquidate everything and get your investment out, you do a slow managed decline because then you want to maybe potentially transition it to something else, which kind of lines in with all the Great Reset conspiracy stuff.
Sort of related to that, I wanted to bring up a podcast I was listening to yesterday, and the guy said he was criticizing boomers at the time, which I don't really like partaking in, but he said Canada has 3 religions. He said the first religion is environmentalism, the second one is multiculturalism, and the third one is bureaucratism. And I think that's accurate. I mean, obviously, environmentalism, we've completely deindustrialized. Multiculturalism, he framed it really well. He was talking about Canadians, but what he meant was white people. When white people in Canada talk about multiculturalism, what they're really saying is like, I love Indian food. I love sushi. I love Mexican. And he's like, that's really all they care about. And then when you get these East Indians, they get into politics. They're ambitious. They want to get ahead. Then Canadians start freaking out. And I guess he's right. And then the third one is bureaucratism. Is like, I learned this in the election. When you go to Canadians and you tell them like maybe we should scale back the size of government, you get all of these old ladies. They start fainting and they got to start fanning them to get them to get conscious again.
And I attribute all of that again to just lack of information in the electorate. I always say it's my line, but we don't have a low information electorate. We have a no information electorate or a heavily propagandized electorate, and they don't understand so much of the fundamentals that you don't know how to start to have a conversation with them. And then they're so emotionally charged. And then again, they attach their egos to their perspectives. So, I mean, you can't even explore a topic with a lot of these people because they're ravenous, man. And again, like, for instance, I'm in Nova Scotia, as I've mentioned, and like if I encounter people and I'm very outspoken against these restrictions, I think it sets a very, very tremendously dangerous precedent. And I come out full swinging against this. And I let it be known I'm very outspoken. So I encounter people that are like, the animus they have for me, I'm just some fucking idiot, some inconsiderate nobody that my opinion is useless and they hate my guts. And I think of myself, it's like, wow, if I really bought all this shit, would I have that? And it's like, no, it's like they are those people that are in the mass, like in a mass formation, like they derive security from this narrative. So by me just having a deviating stance from them, they want to attack me. It's almost like a proclivity of theirs. It's a very mechanistic process. And it scares me, man. It's like, I often say, don't just see low resolution people with their elbows up drooling on themselves. See a programmable army awaiting further instructions. They can be whipped in and weaponized at like, they just got to tell them something. And that's a terrifying realization. I think back to like the War of the Worlds thing with Orson Welles. Are you familiar with this? He did the radio show back in the day and everyone thought the fucking aliens were landing. It's like, it shows the gullibility of a populace. There are a lot of people that believe in the conspiracy realm, I'll say, that believe that was a psyop. at the time, right? That they knew goddamn well, you know, and it's interesting. But it just kind of illustrates the susceptibility of people when you use fear as the motivating premise. And that's why these things have so many commonalities when you observe these things in history, to where people actually kind of isolated this process of mass formation.
Yeah, you're a Christian, so the values that you believe in are, thou shalt not kill, honor your mother, honor your father, which is the family unit. These guys, like their core foundational principles are, government exists to keep us safe. So when you confront them and say, these lockdowns are wrong, they're fundamentally wrong, and then you're at an impasse, and that's why you start getting angry. It would be like if somebody came to you and said, no, it's not wrong to kill. It's not a sin to murder someone. Like you can't progress past that. How do you have a conversation with someone if they believe that killing is not a bad thing, murdering, taking a life? It's the same thing when you say like the purpose of government isn't to keep us safe, it's to secure our rights. Like it doesn't compute in their minds.
Yeah, it's an irreconcilable or incongruous position. Very mutually exclusive. You can't have both. There's no leeway on it. I understand that. But I think a lot of the people have this relative to a lack of information. And I think that's why I think information, and this is also why I believe they're profoundly aware of this. That's why like they keep the mainstream so controlled. That's why once they realized how dangerous the online ecosystem was, they started to control that too. How do they control it? With their controlled opposition people, their controlled opposition operatives that won't just diminish the real voices in the alternative space. They will provide a safe, that, like I say, these controlled opposition dialectics, they set the parameters for acceptable discourse. So, and then if you deviate beyond that, you're on the fringes, right? Just by the nature of the game that they're able to set relative to their prevalence in these markets, right? Like, and it's hard. I really, it sounds crazy, and maybe I'm just a little too much, but I don't trust anyone that has a huge ass audience. Not one of them, man. Not one of them. I think there's so many varying interests relative to how factionalized the ruling class clearly is right now, that I think they all have their interests. And I take everything with several grains of salt in this ecosystem.
Going back to what Eisenhower said in his farewell speech, it's almost like it's a larger than life statement to say, the military industrial complex. And now, if you use it, you sound like a conspiracy theorist. I believe his actual point was it's not, it's not so much the money, it's the control of money. He was talking about taxation. So when you surrender so much of your paycheck to the government, and the government can use that, now they can use it against you. And that's what's happening in Canada. So you mentioned that they started to see how the freedom on the internet was a threat to them, and they clamped down with whatever controlled opposition and censorship rules. Well, that's not because they're working harder than us and they have more, intelligence than us and money in the bank account. No, they're just taking our money. They're like, all right, how can I beat Peyman Askari over the head with this? Yeah, we'll put new filter rules, censorship laws, legislation. We'll lobby more with Peyman's money to get these MPs to ram these bills through. And that's the way this whole racket operates.
It's the most demoralizing aspect too. It's really soul crushing to know that, like for me, I'm a working class dude, and I'm working overtime many weeks, and they're taking 42 to 43% of my labor. And then they're utilizing this money not to make my life better or easier, to weaponize things against me. They have weaponized mass migration, which is affecting the housing value rates, the rental rates. It's decimated our healthcare. It's stagnated working class wages. And I mean, and then they're using what's left of my money to propagandize me, or to send overseas to fuel various war machines. And I'm supposed to not just be okay with this, I should celebrate them for it and be, patriotic. It's like the biggest irony of this current liberal government is that after 10 years of post-nationalism bullshit, the same people that demonized working class Canadians and as being far right extremists for flying the maple leaf, now wanted to whip us into a frenzy the minute that their interests were challenged by Trump. That's when all of a sudden, just on a dime, and it's like I said before, and we had to laugh about it, but they wanted us to dance for them. And like people did. It's like, after all the abuse, like, do you guys not realize, like, just, man, like you're more like, Canada is a people We're not a set of rules. We're not a set of ideals. We're not the bureaucracy that encapsulates the people, that enslaves them at this point. But I mean, we are a people and we have interests and they're not being met. And I mean, for you to not see that and then to just default into like, yeah, I'm a super Canadian with your elbows up. And again, I'll reference them drooling on themselves because they're not paying attention in the slightest. And it's so sad to me because I understand the conditioning and I understand how it works. And here's the really fucked up part. It's not correlated to intelligence. In fact, sometimes with these mass formations and the susceptibility to the narratives and hyperfixation, if you're more intelligent, you're almost more likely to be able to kind of use rhetorical tools to rationalize adhering to these fallacious narratives. And you're afraid on top of it, right? So that just it's very scary. It's a disconcerting aspect. So it's like a lot of very intelligent people are falling for this. And I understand the mechanisms of it, which makes it even more surreal for me. And I reference this a lot, but I have PSYOP fatigue. I'm living in Nova Scotia and we're under full mass formation regarding this one issue about the restriction of our movements. And then I'm interpreting everything else that's happening more broadly geopolitically. And it's just like the whole machine, man, they've lost control of the narrative. And it's like they're trying their damnedest to keep control of it, but it's like they're losing it. And again, it's just very phenomenal to be living through these times and being able to talk about it and stuff. I feel very privileged.
And the election we had in April, it's almost something to be admired. Like the fact that they could, it felt like a software update. Like everybody was living in misery and they did a software update. They're like, yeah, we're proud, patriotic Canadians. And they just flipped on a dime. Yeah. And like these people are going to be ashamed of this for the rest of their lives assuming they at some point wake up and realize that they've been duped. But I don't know if that's going to happen. It happened once before with Trudeau. If you remember, Trudeau said, I'm going to vote 50% of my cabinet are going to be females. So all the women and all the feminists that went and voted for him. And then he fired, who was that woman, Jody Wilson-Raybould? And I like maybe 1 or 2% of the women that are people that originally voted for him on that issue, only 1 or 2% of them woke up. Like this stuff takes a long time and they know that. They're like, you know what, as long as we can lie to them until such time that we unleash another lie, we can just keep compounding this and keep this going. However, I don't think that's not sustainable. Like we're headed towards a French Revolution kind of scenario where, people don't have money. People are waking up faster than they can indoctrinate them. Like look where we are with the Nova Scotia fires. Contrast that with where we were when they rolled out COVID. Mm-hmm. I think 20% of us were awake at that time. There's 40% of us now that are like, wait a minute, doesn't pass the smell test.
I agree, man. I use the analogy. It's like watching a vessel, like a cup, for instance, being filled up by raindrops. Like each raindrop is representative of someone waking up. And when you're watching it, it's like, oh my God, when are the people going to realize? Like, when is this going to fill? It seems like it's fucking not happening. But inevitably it fills and inevitably it overflows. And that's when you reach that tipping point with things like this. And I really think we're on track. I hope it's not a French Revolution style thing. I loathe violence, but I hope it's a mass awakening and we just retake our institutions. I frequently say this line, and it's a very true one. Like they derive their authority from our compliance. We give them that right. And when deals change, like it got to change. We can't comply with things that go against our interests. And again, it's not a Canada thing. It's a Canadians thing. It's where we are. I'm not Canada first. Canada is a set of rules and bureaucracies and Ottawa and corruption, but like Canadians exist. And they're afraid and they're divided and they don't know what to think right now. And that's where my loyalty lies with these people. Not the government, not for any reason either. And you can't rationalize that to me. Like I will defend that assertion.
I was laughing because the Dominion Society stole your catchphrase.
I saw that. Yeah, I commented on it. Look, dude, it's a saying. I didn't copyright it. And again, we have a lot of shared values. I don't want to be adversarial with these gentlemen. I respect them immensely. I really do. Potentially in the future, I'll have a conversation with them. But I was a little, because that was my thing, man. That was my phrase when everyone was going pro Canada. All of a sudden, it's like, what about Canadians? Like Pierre Poilievre, everyone's Canada first. All of a sudden. But what about Canadians first? Because like that, it sounds silly, but when you think about it, it's very relevant because like the parameters that define a Canadian now are I mean, my God, there's people here that have come here to go to school and now they're considered Canadians, and it's crazy. Or they're here on a working program and they're Canadians. Who everyone's a Canadian in this pseudo moralistic lingo. And it's like you said before, a lot of people think multiculturalism is like Thai food or something, right? Like a lot of naive Westerners, but no, it's representative of the balkanization and the factionalization of your populace, of your people. So then instead of having a group of people with a shared common values, you have these disparate groups of people. And it's like I said before, they're not just, a lot of these cultures that have come into Canada are not just incongruous with Western culture, they're incompatible and incongruous with each other. Like you got in Brampton, we have various tribal warfare. Like we got Sikh individuals fighting with Hindu individuals. We have, Muslim communities fighting with Jewish communities, and we have all of this division. And there's everything's like whipped into such a fever pitch. I often think of that colloquialism with the ants in the jar. It's like if you have, black ants and red ants in a jar, they're pretty good until you shake the jar. Then they'll kind of line up on those metrics and they'll rip each other apart. And that's what I feel as being the division is that strong in Canada. And I think the government is blatantly playing us against one another, and it scares me because I don't want to see this get violent, and I fear that it truly might.
Like that French Revolution reference I made, and I've started making it more recently. Like, yes, we're being compliant, but it's almost like they control the food supply. Like, look what they did during COVID. Take the jab, or we will take away your ability to eat food, which is what a salary is. Yeah. Look what they're doing with Tamara Leach and Chris Barber. They're throwing him in jail for mischief. Go find me 10 people on the street that even know what mischief is. You Google it. You're like, wait a minute. This is like stealing somebody's garden gnome, or, lighting a bag of dog poop on fire and leaving it on someone's front porch, like keying a car. You don't go to jail for that. Go downtown Vancouver. Every single person knows one junkie that got super high and then started like smashing their vehicle in the middle of the night. They don't go to jail for that. They go to a rehab center, or they give them some free drugs and send them on their merry way. So like the level of abuse of power and the level of disrespect and disdain for the average citizen, it's getting to the point where, as compliant as Canadians are, someone's going to say like, screw this. I mean, why do I have to suffer because of my lineage or the color of my skin? I'm talking about white people now. Like, someone's going to do something. It might be something minor, like punching a politician in the face, but something's going to happen.
It's a very precarious dynamic, and it always is, between the people and the ruling class. And we're almost at like the level of ignorance to where it's a let them eat cake moment from the Canadian government. Like when they're celebrating that the Confederation Bridge having a reduction in price for a bridge that services like a very small percentage of the population and is very irrelevant while the country's burning around them. That's as ignorant. That's like a let them eat cake moment. Like they don't understand what it feels like for the people in Canada. And again, I'll go back to the working class, man. We're feeling the weight of this in ways that others aren't. And we can't maintain our quality of life. We're losing it. We're losing it big time. And that's relevant, right? So not only is it precarious, but then it's like I said, it seems like they're intentionally trying to foment division, a racial division, economic division, age division. And it's like on all these various metrics, and then political division too, being the most polarizing presently, the right left dichotomy, which can very much, and I think is one of the primary tools in how they herd people. I really believe that too. Just from my own intuition regarding it, it's like I think that the right left preferences. I know that, like I mentioned this to you before. I don't know if it was on air, but we all have like a genetic predisposition towards a certain temperament. And then we have a temperamental predisposition towards certain political leanings. Like there's a vast body of literature that indicates this conclusively. So therefore it's like we're by our very nature kind of we're weaponized against each other. And I think that division, that proclivity is utilized by these elites. And I think that's how they kind of are able to do it. It's like I said before, it's like you have two herd dogs, and one herd dog's so ferocious and scary, he scares all the sheep this way. And then this dog is eventually gets ferocious and scary too, and they go back to this dog. But inevitably, what's occurring with humanity, with Western cultures, is the trajectory is it never alters, and we're going towards more centralized control. They're normalizing. They're trying to set precedents every day. They're outright, it's like what we were saying, it's like anarcho tyranny against the populace, where they're not enforcing crime. Crime is rampant in our cities, but they're enforcing political persecutions. The reason Tamara Lich is being publicly persecuted politically is relative to disincentivize all of us from speaking against the regime. This is like tyranny 101. This is modus operandi of tyrants, man. And it's like, you're watching all this, and I could say if it was all in a vacuum and it was one little thing, then maybe you could dismiss it and say, oh, well, you're paranoid, bro. You know, that's unlikely. But when you take the preponderance of all of this circumstantial evidence and then you analyze it together, it's like, well, yeah, I'm sorry to say it, guys. You guys can all think I'm nuts. That's fine. I've gotten it before, but no, there's something bigger going on here. And if we don't realize it, our interests are not going to be represented, and we're going to end up subjugated in some kind of a tyranny.
I talk to a lot of whistleblowers and victims of lawfare, and I've formulated my opinions based on person to person conversation with other Canadians. And when you say like they're disrespecting the working class, or they don't understand the working class, here's how it works. Like on the ground, you have a Crown prosecutor who comes in and they're just like this, like they're looking at the case like that. This is what the case says. This is how I should proceed. They have absolutely, like, to them, it's not even, it doesn't occur to them that the government is actively working to harm the people. And then you have the judge on the case. The same thing. The judge has like a rule book. You could think of him as a referee. If this, that, else that, else if that. Okay, fine. We're going to bounce this guy to this court. And then gets to that court. He's like, all right, I'm going to send you over to this department over here. You're going to spend 10,000 issuing a report. In the minds of the judge, they're doing no wrong. They're trying to help the citizen, the working class person you're talking about. They don't understand that the entire way that the system's set up, the way the laws are set up, the way that those procedures that they're following, they're specifically set up to carry out lawfare against the people. So this is a strange version of I was just following orders. Except when you say I was following orders, you at least know that you're guilty of sin. But these guys, they think that they're doing a public service.
I believe that, and that's tyranny. It's like from the beginning of time, when you study tyrants, it's like they don't just feel like it's their kind of that they have the right to tyrannize you. They feel it's their ethical responsibility, and that it's for your own good. And that's the mechanism of how these people sleep at night. No one sees themselves as a villain, and I think these varying judges that make up the broader judiciary think the same thing. But when the Westminster Parliament system is so systemically corrupt by its very nature, and I mean, especially in regards to the Senate and legislatively, like how inept it is, I think it's rife to be exploited. And that's what I think has occurred. I think it started to occur many years ago, but I think our institutions have been subverted by these very big globalist power players. And I think that's just, it's to the point now, again, where I say, I know it's still controversial, but at the same time, it's practically evident. So, I mean, you kind of got to have that. Like, if you can't accept that proposition, like, it's really hard to have a conversation with people. And I encounter this. People that'll say to me, like, oh, yeah, like Pierre Poilievre's back in, like, we're going to bring it home this time. And it's just like, dude, we're seeing different things. We're watching different movies. I mean, and I just like, yeah, it's like, where do we begin? How much time do you have? Let me see if I can get through the conditioning, right? And it's funny. It's totally ironic, because when I first came on here about 2 years ago, man, I was supporting Pierre Poilievre. I didn't understand this. Like I said, I've been learning this as I go and being very humble with it. I'm not quick to jump on many things. I'm just truly trying to interpret it and then provide, like, it's keeping my ego as detached as I can, provide my genuine interpretation of it, and have conversations with people. But that's kind of the extent of it. And that's what kills me too. And it was a big motivator for me, is the amount of people that just have their egos attached to this. And they're just these big, like, personalities. And then they're pushing these very safe narratives. They're not challenging power in any way. So it's just like the alternative media. A lot of these guys are becoming the corporate press that's just totally controlled and staying in safe territory because it affects their bottom line. I think it's crucial for us to kind of maintain that independent spirit if you're going to be efficacious in criticizing politics. Because it's like I kind of referenced before, the premise of the media was to serve as a fourth estate for society. They had a very, very integral mechanism to provide the electorate with reliable information, to not just interpret the complexity of politics, but then to condense it and provide the voting electorate with a digestible version of it so they could make then an informed decision. That's how this was set up to work. But like, so obviously if you're in the political class, your interests are best served by controlling that media class, and that happened many generations ago. And I mean, that's the situation we're in, and they get ahead of it. And that's why I said it's like this ecosystem has never been more convoluted with a lot of disingenuous players. But right now we got about 384 watching. I want to ask everyone if you can give this a share and a like. That helps immensely. I'm going to have a little look here if it's cool with Peyman, and we're going to take a couple of these questions. I neglect these chats so bad. I'm fucking terrible at this. Pardon my language.
You did a good job when you were doing the solo stream answering all the questions.
Well, it's easier then, right? They got my focus, but like I want to be respectful to you, and I'm in this discourse. Like I'm a conversationalist at heart. Like I want to see where we're going to go. And I'm giving you my focus, and I'm trying to think of my responses, but still pay attention. So it's like I could see all this chat stuff going on, and I'm like, oh, I can't even go near that. And my unfamiliarity with the software, it doesn't help. Let's see here. What do we have? So we got Robbie Lighthouse Keeper. Trump's offering an off-ramp, peace in Ukraine. He lines the children up in front of his desk. The children didn't learn anything. They're sticking to their tropes and bullshit, not diplomacy. Pierre is fully supporting the EU losers. NATO, that's now integrated into the globalist EU framework. I got to say, I agree with that entirely. I couldn't have said it as well myself. And I think that was what he wanted to display to people. I think he wants us all to start to get it, because he can't tell us. It's almost like the Matrix. I can show you the door, but I can't push you through it. I can't make you go through it. And I really think that there's psychological warfare going on between these various factions, and they want us to come to some very obvious conclusions and realizations presently.
The Pierre part, I can't comment because I haven't followed him. I don't know what his position is on Europe, but I think the EU, Europe is bankrupt, and they desperately need money, and that's why they want this war, this proxy war between U.S. and Russia. Partly because they want to, distract, but presumably somehow some money from the US would go back into Europe. I think that's what this is about. This is why Trump wants to get the hell out. If you remember in 2016, he wanted it out of NATO back then as well. And he wants out of NATO now too. He's a nationalist. That's why I support Trump, even though he's pissed me off a lot in the last few months.
Yeah, I agree with that too. That's definitely something I didn't consider. It's a very relevant point. See, here we got Sue Kellen Dyer. Joe Average likes to be apathetic until it directly affects him. Yeah, that's true to form. It's true to history. I mean, people are busy too, right? Like I obviously, and Peyman as well, I'll speak for you here. Like we have interests. We're very curious about politics, and we pay attention to this stuff. It's by our nature, but most people don't. The vast majority of people, unfortunately, don't. So I mean, it's not until it affects them. It's not real until it affects their bottom line and their day-to-day lives. That's when we start to see change.
Hey Sue, good to see you or hear from you watching this. JP, you should have her on. She's a phenomenal woman. She's been in politics for a very long time. She understands everything about the maritime provinces and Canada at large. She's got a good base as well. You should try to finagle your way in, and you two would have a good chat.
I definitely will, Sue. We'll hit some DMs up. That sounds interesting. And again, I want to tell people, like, because I started this show with the premise of wanting to talk to various people in the alternative space. But I'm a working class guy. I have a factory gig. I get overtime available, and my schedule is so sporadic. It just became really, really tremendously stressful to try to negotiate everyone's schedules. And then having people have to, like, Peyman is such a considerate gentleman. He always just like makes time for me, but that's kind of what I require. So that's why I've been hesitant, but I could definitely, that sounds worthwhile. I will definitely hit you up with a message, Sue. That would be an interesting conversation. What else do we got here? Tim, our politicians don't know this. CSIS takes its marching orders from the CIA, RCMP as well, which is why to me it's like blatantly Washington deep inside Ottawa. I don't know, man. Again, it's hard to dismiss anything in this climate. The intuition I would have had even 2 years ago to say they wouldn't do that. That's too sensational. All of those kind of proclivities are long gone for me. I like to pay like every theory I'll give the proper attention to because it's becoming abundantly clear the one thing that we can rely on is that they are lying to us in profound ways. So I won't dismiss anything, but I don't really have any thoughts on that one.
Tim, it's good to see you as well. Tim's another really smart guy. I actually agree with Tim on this one. I think it's kind of started with NAFTA when a guest of mine described it as the DC model started creeping into Canada. We saw in the 90s, I saw this take off, and the inflection point, I think, was Jean Chrétien. He was the last prime minister that came out and stood up against this sort of deep state, the American empire when they wanted to go invade Iraq. And after that, just the level of integration between Canada and America, and then with 9/11, there was integration of our intelligence agencies. So I agree with that. Yeah.
And I definitely, again, it's more ignorance on my behalf. I'm not super familiar with that, but I wouldn't dismiss it. I think here I'll put it this way, from my personal thoughts on a lot of this, with is being as broad as I can. I think that politics for the duration of my life in Canada has been an elaborate and performative charade. And I believe the premise of this charade is to provide the debt-ridden, indentured employees of Canada with the illusion of participatory governance. I think it's that bad. I think it's very performative. And I think obviously this has been a process, and I think it's hitting its height now, and we're probably going to see some change soon. But that's how little faith I have in everything. It couldn't be at a lower point for trust and faith in governments as a Canadian.
Yeah, no, you're right. And it is a charade. I just think like that charade it's getting bigger and bigger. It's taken off since NAFTA. Every decade it's worse than the decade before is what I mean.
Yeah, I can definitely agree with that for sure. But we're hitting the hour mark here. I want to thank everyone for watching. Is there anything you want to say before we part here, Peyman?
Yeah, there's a We Unify conference coming up September 18th, I believe. If people want to go there, I'll be there. There's a lot of good speakers. Other than that, you can follow me at Peyman Askari 451 on X and Inlay Terms on YouTube.
Definitely follow Peyman Askari. Peyman's one of the not just most genuine people in Canadian political commentary. He's one of the nicest dudes too. As you could tell by his many conversations with everyone, he has a reputation that precedes him and speaks to that assertion as well. But with that said, I want to thank everyone for watching, and share it, like it. The algorithm hates people that tell the truth. I try to tell the truth exclusively to the best of my ability, so the algorithm loathes me. This is Dumb the Wiser. My name is JP Berg. Thanks for tuning in. Cheers.
Bye.